fees. Fees. Have you stopped going to shows because of ticket prices or found a workaround? Call in and share your experience next with Florida Matters Live and Local.
Classical WSMR is your connection to the local art scene, featuring live performances from right here in your backyard. Listen now at WSMR.org and see on-demand performances anytime. Search Classical WSMR on YouTube.
Savor Sarasota is now underway through June 14th, with restaurants from Lakewood Ranch to Englewood offering multi-course prix-fixe menus for lunch and dinner. Visit savorsarasota.com for all the delicious details.
The US and Israel's war with Iran launched more than 3 months ago, and despite ceasefire negotiations, intermittent fighting continues. So how is all this affecting Tampa Bay's Iranian community? I'm Matthew Petty, and coming up on Florida Matters Live and Local, we'll get the perspective from a local businessman reflecting on what this war means to him. Also this hour, earlier this year, a federal jury found Ticketmaster and Live Nation have been acting as a monopoly. So what does this mean for concertgoers and smaller venues here in Tampa Bay? An outspoken club owner who trekked to Washington to share his views with lawmakers joins us to talk about the challenges of running a live music venue. I want to hear from you. Do you feel like you're getting good value for the price of a concert ticket these days? And are you expecting the Ticketmaster ruling to impact how you enjoy live shows? Call 813-755-6562 or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Also, we'll take a closer look at the aftermath of Blue Origin's launchpad explosion on the Space Coast last week. First, these headlines.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Libby Casey. Senate Republicans will gather today on Capitol Hill for their weekly meeting. The lawmakers are expected to discuss their bill to fund immigration enforcement. As NPR's Barbara Sprunt reports, the package has been stalled.
Senators were initially caught by surprise by the White House's proposal to establish a nearly $2 billion anti-weaponization fund, something that drew bipartisan backlash. Lawmakers feared it could pay funds to people convicted of assaulting police officers during the attack on the Capitol building on January 6th. Senate Republicans have been pushing the administration to abandon the program. After the Justice Department said it will abide by a court order temporarily blocking the fund, Republicans may be back on track to passing a reconciliation package that would fund immigrations and customs enforcement and border patrol through 2029. Barbara Sprunt, NPR News, the Capitol.
In southern Lebanon, 2 children and their father are among the at least 10 people dead from Israeli strikes. President Trump intervened yesterday to stop Israel from attacking Beirut as Iran called off peace talks with the U.S. until the Israeli invasion of Lebanon ended. NPR's Jawad Rizkallah has more from Beirut.
The new deadly Israeli attacks on southern Lebanon threaten to derail Trump's efforts at the ceasefire deal with Iran. Iran has conditioned any ceasefire deal with the U.S. must include a truce in Lebanon. President Trump said he spoke to representatives of the Iran-backed Hezbollah who agreed to stop shooting at Israeli soldiers, and he said Israel had agreed to do the same. The Lebanese embassy in Washington further clarified Hezbollah had agreed to a U.S. proposal for the mutual cessation of attacks. And the embassy said under this agreement, Israel wouldn't strike the capital Beirut, although attacks continue elsewhere, and Hezbollah wouldn't strike Israel. Talks between Israeli and Lebanese officials are set to resume this week in Washington. Jawad Rizkallah, NPR News, Beirut.
President Trump has signed an AI executive order. The White House says it is aimed at advancing innovation and security. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence companies are moving towards public stock offerings. As NPR's Scott Horsley reports, that will give investors an opportunity to place bets on a booming part of the U.S. economy.
Anthropic has filed paperwork with the Securities and Exchange Commission in a preliminary step towards selling stock to the public. Anthropic makes the popular AI chatbot Claude. Private investors have already valued the company at nearly $1 trillion. Demand for artificial intelligence is boosting the fortunes of companies that provide the building blocks. Stocks of both Marvell Technologies and Generac are up. Marvell designs chips for data centers, while Generac provides backup power. Crude oil prices have been bouncing up and down, but the U.S. benchmark is back above $90 a barrel. AAA says retail gasoline prices dipped about 3 cents a gallon overnight. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
It's primary day in 6 election states. It's NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive, with small business insurance for protecting a variety of business types with multiple coverage options, designed to fit business owners' needs. More about small business insurance is at progressivecommercial.com.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7. I'm Craig Kopp. The 2026 Atlantic hurricane season is now underway, but meteorologist Andrew Wolfeck with the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network says wind shear and another factor should keep things quiet for the foreseeable future.
A large plume of Saharan air is making its way off the African continent and working westbound. This dust tends to put a cap on thunderstorm activity, so for large parts of the basin, it will even be difficult for clouds to form. Now, over the next few days, you might hear about tropical cyclones forming, but that activity will be confined to the Pacific Ocean with no threats here in the Atlantic Basin.
Wolfeck says the first named storm usually forms by June the 20th. That storm will be named Arthur. And for more, be sure to check out our hurricane guide at WUSF.org. The state has agreed to pay nearly $500,000 to a biologist fired by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. The agency fired Brittany Brown after she reposted a meme on her personal Instagram account that claimed late conservative activist Charlie Kirk wouldn't care about children being shot in their classrooms. ACLU of Florida staff attorney Carrie McNamara represented Brown. She spoke to FloridaMatters Live and Local on Monday.
State employees do not lose their rights to free speech when they go work for the government, and it is wholly improper. It is unconstitutional for the state government to pick and choose which viewpoints it allows its state employees to express.
WUSF reached out to the FWC, but officials say they're not able to give an interview at this time. You can hear the full conversation at WUSF.org. The state has formally filed a lawsuit against OpenAI and CEO Sam Altman. The suit claims the company knowingly released ChatGPT to the public while concealing serious risks. This civil complaint alleges OpenAI and Altman prioritized getting ChatGPT to market over user safety. I'm Craig Kopp, WUSF 89.7 News.
I'm Douglas Soul, the state government reporter for WUSF's Your Florida team. I'm in Tallahassee, bringing you important government news. Find Your Florida on air, online, and on social media.
St. Petersburg College has a rich and proud history that began in 1927. SPC has grown and evolved, marking ongoing excellence and community service. You can support this great tradition. More at SP College Pathway to Better.
This is Florida Matters Live and Local, broadcasting from the doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studio at WSF in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, after months of internet restrictions that have left many Iranians cut off from the outside world, access has been returning to parts of that country. For many Americans, of course, the war with Iran feels like a headline, but for some of our neighbors in Florida, it's real. They're trying to check in with loved ones, and today we're talking with Dr. Reza Razavi, a local businessman and former high school educator who's traveled to Iran regularly and has family there. He joins us now. Dr. Razavi, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I want to hear from you as well. Maybe you've got family overseas in places affected by conflict. Could be Iran, could be other places. How do you stay connected when major events happen far from home? You can join the conversation. Call 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562, or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Reza, you've traveled back and forth to Iran for years. So when was the last time you were there, and what have recent conversations with your family been like?
Well, last time I was there, it was about 2 years ago, and recent conversations has been very difficult because, as you know, there has been a complete blackout, and it was very, very difficult. Obviously, I think after 90 days, finally, several days ago, the light was turned on and you could have regular contact.
So it's like 3 months without been able to get through directly.
That is 100% correct. And that has impacted communication. Obviously, within the country, it has impacted a lot of online businesses and a lot of young people. As you know, Iran has a huge population under the age of 30 and very educated, very robust, a lot of folks that have businesses online. And it has impacted communication and businesses even internally.
So with that blackout, I mean, were there ways for you to get word back to your family or hear from them sort of indirectly?
And to be honest with you, extremely difficult unless there were folks that they had some kind of businesses that they had the ability or they had the government blessings to be able to have certain lines. So for my family, it was extremely difficult. I still, even up to today, there is a lot of extended cousins that I haven't been able to reach out to.
Are you worried about them?
You always worry. When there is tension, when there's conflicts, you constantly worry about your loved ones.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
What do you think the biggest misconception is that Americans might have about people living in Iran?
I think Iran is completely misunderstood. I would characterize Iran as being very similar to the United States. It's, we always used to joke around, it's a little America. It truly is, from natural resources to the fascination of Iranians with Americans, and going back to pre-revolution and even still up to today, even you go to the streets, you see street names in Persian and English. Most people speak English, even if it's not fluent. You would easily be able to travel in Iran. I honestly think in terms of a way of life, adaptability to U.S., for me, it was a lot easier than for most people.
When did you come here?
So 1990 is when I came to U.S., and I was about 15 years ago, 15 years old at the time.
Wow.
And but my family has been here since 1953.
Wow. Okay. So I wonder too about what I've read about Iran is it may not be politically and sort of governmentally, but it's actually quite a diverse country in terms of its demographics, right?
It really is. So when you glance at Iran and Iranian population, you have quite a bit of diversity, both from a religious standpoint and ethnic group. So we have Zoroastrians, we have Baha'is, we have Shia Muslims, Sunni Muslims, Christians, Jewish population. We have a very extensive, I think, as a matter of fact, if you go back pre-1979, you would notice that you have the largest concentration of Jewish population in Iran outside of Israel. And that's a fact. So it's always been welcoming. There has been always unity. And, when I say unity in terms of religion and race, honestly, I was shell-shocked when I came to the United States because I didn't understand, this differentiation in race because I have black people in my family and white people as blonde hair and blue eyes. So for me, it was like, I didn't quite understand that. And because my dad is from southern Iran, Kerman, and my mom is from northern Iran. So northern Iranians, it just happens to be Iranians. They're more light texture and skin color and all of that. And southern Iranians are a little darker. And then in terms of ethnic group, we have our Turks, we have our Kurds, we have our Baluch, and Arabs and the Persians and many others, subsectors, like Gilex. So there is a huge diversity.
Yeah, and we probably just don't get to see that reading and hearing and watching about it from here in the United States. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Reza Razavi, a Tampa businessman who often goes to Iran to visit family, who hasn't for a couple of years now, though. But since the war started in February, we have talked with USF Professor Arman Mahmoudian about the geopolitical aspects of the conflict. You can listen to those conversations at WUSF.org. And if you want to weigh in on this conversation now, you can give us a call, 813-755-6562. Maybe you've got loved ones in Iran or another place where it's been hard to get in contact with folks because of conflict or other reasons. The number again, 813-755-6562. 6562. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. I mean, one of the things that is coming through in some of the reporting is prices in Iran for daily goods have skyrocketed. So from what you know and conversations you've had with family back there, what is that like for folks? How visible is that economic strain?
So as you know, my background is economics, and I have a love and passion for economics.
So you're sort of seeing it from a human perspective and just kind of looking at the bigger picture as well?
Absolutely, from both macro and microeconomics standpoint. So the inflation has been astronomical. There was a report that they were just talking about 80% inflation since the war has started.
And we complain about inflation here, but that's 80% is on another magnitude.
It's astronomical. I was actually looking at just basic goods, particularly in area of medicine. That number is, eye-soaring. Let me put it this way. But even on basic goods, we're talking about price of rice. We're talking about price of meat. So the war has had a major impact. Now, something that Persian people, Iranian people have, is that they normally prepare long term. So most families, their supply is 90 days or maybe even 6 months out. If you're dealing with farmers, they're a year out. I can tell you that personally. I have knowledge on that. But so that scarcity, I think, hasn't hit the market. As I was speaking with some families, they were saying that there is everything available. It's just the prices are so expensive that unless you have the financial ability, you're not able to purchase it.
Now, you told one of our producers before we got on air here that people should remember that citizens of Iran are not the same as their government. Why is that important?
I think that's tremendously important. Just looking at the United States, I mean, all the Iranian entrepreneurs that have come. I mean, I can name Pierre Omidyar, for instance, and different companies in the United States that's, from eBay that's been created. He's Persian, French, to various other, NASA scientists. I think there was a report by the United States that one of the highest educated and financially well communities in U.S. are the Iranian American communities. Most of us were very driven and were pushed to study extremely hard. There is a huge differentiation between governments, just like there is a huge differentiation between government in the United States and people in the United States. You go to different states, there are different folks. And in Iran, it's very much so the same way.
Now, is there a feeling, do you think, of being caught between this kind of geopolitical debate that's playing out here in the United States and just basic concern for loved ones and family and friends back home?
Well, I can share with you a very dear friend of mine who is a heart surgeon in California. His dad just fell and broke his back, and he's 90 years old. And he was deeply concerned. He really wants to go back, but he's afraid. And that type of fear, I think, exists within not just Iranian Americans, but I think anybody that lives outside of Iran wanting to go back to Iran. So that's part of a calculation one has to deal with. So not only there is lack of communication, but back home still up to this day, I think there's a lot of folks that they don't have access. The platform has opened, but not everybody has access. But also return home for a lot of people to be able to see loved ones are in question.
Yeah, now in the last 30 seconds or so we have here, you've taught advanced placement economics, world history. When you look at what's happening in Iran right now, do you have some optimism about some resolution to this, or do you think this could drag on for some time?
Honestly, I don't. And I know it's mind-boggling, but I wish all administrations in the U.S., they had, someone who's an advisor who has been a native and has lived in the countries. I think the Iranian government understands very thoroughly what they're doing in terms of negotiation, and they have a very good understanding of U.S. politics. So this is, in my opinion, is going to drag out until there is a time limit for President Trump and President Netanyahu.
Okay, I guess we'll watch and see what happens. Dr. Reza Razavi, Tampa businessman, former teacher with family in Iran. Thank you so much for your insights. Really
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, coming up next, we'll take a look at why the state of Florida is celebrating a holiday for Jefferson Davis. Florida Matters Live and Local continues in a moment.
Hey, I'm Gabriella Paul, and I report on people living paycheck to paycheck in the region.
They're firefighters, they're teachers, they're nurses, but they don't make enough money to pay the bills, and they're one paycheck away from being on the street or in some sort of substandard housing.
At WUSF, I tell your stories about the rising cost of living.
Funding for WUSF comes from listeners like you, and also Badawi Law, offering legal services in personal injury, immigration, and auto accidents, with offices in Tampa, Florida. Office information and practice details at badawilaw.com, or learn more on Instagram at Badawi Law.
Because you count on WUSF, your support matters. Become a Cornerstone member today with an annual gift of $1,200 or more to help sustain the trusted journalism you rely on every day. Make an impact at WUSF.org/cornerstone or call 813-974-8682.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, tomorrow, Florida observes Jefferson Davis Day. It's not a day off for folks, but it is on the state calendar. Jefferson Davis, of course, served as the U.S. Secretary of War from 1853 to 1857 before becoming the President of the Confederate States of America during the Civil War. And his birthday, June 3rd, has been an official holiday in the state of Florida since 1905. To take a closer look at why this holiday exists and how it fits into our state tapestry today, we're joined by Rodney Kite-Powell, Director of the Tampa Bay History Center. Rodney, thank you so much for coming back.
Absolutely. It's great to be here again.
And also with us is Dr. Robert Casanello, Associate Professor of History at the University of Central Florida. Dr. Casanello, thank you as well.
Well, thanks for having me.
And if you're curious maybe about the history and status of this perhaps controversial holiday, join our conversation. The number is 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562, or email us at floridamatters@wusf.org. Well, Rodney, let's start with the history. So this goes back to 1905, but that, of course, was a full 40 years after the Civil War actually ended to, put this in the state calendar. What was going on in Florida back then that made lawmakers want to commemorate Jefferson Davis?
Well, actually, it goes back, at least as an idea, a bit earlier. Their first references to it in the papers are actually 1891, when the state legislature was considering it. And they may have actually passed it at that point and then maybe reinstituted it in 1905. But so if you go back to the 1890s, Florida had in the South had exited Reconstruction about 13, 14 years prior, and you see the beginning of what's called the New South, new investment in the South, people coming into the South. Atlanta is really the kind of pinnacle of that, but Tampa and Florida were coming out of their pioneer era. The railroad had arrived, a lot of new investment had arrived, and so you also have at the same time about half, actually, of Confederate veterans are still alive, but they're now getting old. They're getting in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and their actual daughters, you think of the daughters of the Confederacy, they're around and active, and they're wanting to honor their families. Also, at the same time, we came out of Reconstruction, which elevated Black voices and kind of silenced to some degree those Southern voices. So they're coming back. Those Southern voices are coming back, and they want to reinstitute power and reinstitute authority. And so to do so in a lot of ways was these symbolic gestures of kind of revitalizing the lost cause of the Old South. So celebrating not only Jefferson Davis for his birthday, but also Robert E. Lee. His birthday was a oftentimes Southern holiday, and what they called Confederate Memorial Day. So there were a number of these Confederate-related holidays that were coming up to really kind of refocus that Southern history, but also, again, build on that lost cause narrative that the South wasn't really wrong in what they were doing in the Civil War.
Is that the era at which you started seeing these monuments being constructed as well?
Exactly. So you see these same things all happening generally at the same time. And again, it's oftentimes the true daughters, the real daughters and sons of these veterans. And they're seeing their fathers get old and pass away. And so they're, again, justifying their memories of them and don't want to think of their parents as being bad people.
And so are their fathers as being bad people. So they're celebrating them. And again, also there is a racial component to them, because oftentimes at particularly the speeches for these monuments, you're hearing a lot of rhetoric of the time, and it's very harsh and what we would certainly consider quite racist.
Now, you mentioned the lost cause. This is kind of this massive cultural push across the South to kind of rethink what had happened in the Civil War. Mm-hmm. So how did a state holiday like this kind of fit into that Jim Crow system and help kind of cement that in daily life?
Well, as you use that kind of that lost cause narrative, which has several components, and one that the North was the aggressor, the other that slavery was not a major component or really any component to the cause of the war. Then you can begin to justify certain actions. But then you can also celebrate the people who were pushing those actions. Mm-hmm. And so, again, the case of Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy, as you'd mentioned, and other kind of quote-unquote heroes like Lee, who was venerated throughout the South and even recognized in the North to some degree as a hero of sorts.
Yeah.
It's a way to, again, not just justify, but then begin to celebrate that idea.
Robert Casanello, you spend a lot of time tracking Florida's civil rights and kind of the history of how that plays out in contemporary society. When you look at how the state government is actively overhauling, say, school textbook today, I mean, does this sort of keeping this holiday in the picture, does that fit into that narrative in some regards?
Well, I mean, I think this fits into what Governor DeSantis is moving Florida into, sort of like a new lost cause, if you will, that expands beyond race, but includes gender and sexuality, and I would even say immigration.
Over the last decade or so, Robert, lawmakers have at least tried to file bills to remove holidays like this, but this year that didn't happen. What does that tell you kind of about the mood, I guess, in the state capitol right now?
Well, I mean, the state capitol is really interested in whitewashing history, and I think this is in keeping with that. Much like in the 1880s, 1890s, when Jefferson Davis's reputation was being sort of, redeemed, we're seeing kind of a similar thing here, in that there's this kind of white grievance in the idea that, white men specifically are being targeted, since the 1960s, and their history is being eclipsed and things like this. And I think the standards that DeSantis and many Republicans in Tallahassee are pushing, as well as state officials, are in keeping with this sort of idea that we want to elevate Western history and, and the role of white men in the American past at the expense of these other voices who have become much more prominent since the 1950s.
Rodney, I wonder how many everyday residents in Florida actually know about this holiday.
I'm guessing very few. And actually, I did just a little, looking around, and there are several holidays that Florida has that I believe most people don't know we have. There's a Susan B. Anthony Day, celebrating her birthday. There's a Pascua Florida Day, celebrating Ponce de Leon's naming of Florida. And of course, these aren't nearly as controversial, and they don't have the same ties that a Jefferson Davis Day does. But there are a lot of things like that I think people have no sense of, and then you can go down the rabbit hole of the obscure Florida laws that we still have that are still on the books, even though they're irrelevant. But some of them obviously do have more relevance than others, and even though we don't know about a Jefferson Davis Day or a Susan B. Anthony Day, no one's has tried to repeal, I don't think, Susan B. Anthony Day. And so I think it's when you can look at what the modern connections are as a way to look at our past. I think that's where we can kind of really get into a conversation. But again, most people, I guarantee you, have no idea this exists.
Unless they're listening to this program right now. Rodney Kite-Powell, Director of the Tampa Bay History Center, thank you so much for stopping by.
My pleasure.
And Dr. Robert Casanello, Associate Professor of History at the University of Central Florida. Dr. Casanello, thank you as well.
All right, thank you.
Well, coming up next, Ticketmaster wars have plagued us all, and a local venue owner in Ybor City will tell us why he has had enough. You're listening to Florida Matters Live and Local. Stay with us.
This month, we're celebrating the first birthday of the Bay Blend podcast. That's a year of news, culture, and events, along with some of my dumbest jokes, all packaged for you each weekday morning. But we did realize that the mascot on our logo, that cute little manatee holding a coffee cup, has no name. Help us change that. Submit a name you think fits this little critter best at WUSF.org. Maybe it looks like a Geraldine, or a River, or a Tatum Parker Emerson III. We're taking all suggestions, but you only have a week to submit them. So help us shape the Bay Blend for years to come by going to WUSF.org.
WUSF programs are powered by support from community businesses like Tampa Bay Solar. Learn how your business can support WUSF by calling Jerry Patterson at 800-741-9090.
WUSF's Wake Up Call newsletter is your daily dose of what to know across Tampa Bay, Florida, and the country. It comes straight to your inbox every weekday morning. To sign up, head to WUSF.org and subscribe to the Wake Up Call newsletter.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, for years, fans have been complaining about the rising prices of tickets and add-on fees. And after a federal jury found Live Nation and Ticketmaster acted as a monopoly, the owner of Crowbar in Ybor City went all the way to Capitol Hill to have his voice heard. Last week, Tom DeGeorge, who's run Crowbar for over 20 years, told lawmakers the challenges the monopoly has had on independent venue owners like him across the country.
Crowbar in every independent venue is dealing with ticket scalping bots, inflation, local development fights, and just trying to survive as independents in markets dominated by corporate giants.
Well, Tom is also a member of the National Independent Venue Association, and he joins us now to explain why he wanted to talk to the lawmakers. Tom, welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local.
Hello, thanks for having me again.
And I want to hear from you as well. Maybe you've stopped going to concerts because of ticket prices or had to think about that. Do you remember when Ticketmaster felt like a service and not a larger player driving up the cost of live entertainment? Join the conversation by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Tom, before we get to your point of view, what was it like actually being on the Capitol, speaking on behalf of venues in Tampa and across the country?
I think at one point, when they were asking me some questions with my testimony, I had said, wish we weren't here where we are right now in this moment, but being that we are, I'm glad I'm the person here speaking up for our membership. NEVA started out a crisis in 2020. You had venues all around the country that were shuttered. We had no ability to make money. We had no ability to help our communities, which is something I know we care about dearly. And we were still being told that we had to pay all of our bills. So like a lot of businesses during the pandemic that were struggling, we were hit especially hard, and nothing since then has gotten easier. Of course, Live Nation, Ticketmaster only got smarter and more powerful. The resale market got more severe. Inflation, development sped up. So being that we're really in this fight for our lives, I think that while it's hard for a lot of our members to speak up because they might be afraid of retribution from a powerful entity like Live Nation. Mm-hmm. As hard as it was, I was honored to be the person to be able to go there and speak up about the problems we're facing and why we need to change the direction that things are going.
I should just point out too, in the foreground of this, people who have been following your story and know a bit about Ybor City will know that you have said you're closing Crowbar.
Yeah, we close at the end of July. And we I think more and more people are understanding now, but I was actually public about that in 2021 that, it was just very clear to me. There were already, venues succumbing before we could even get them the Save Our Stages funding. And I could see that Ybor was changing, and I just felt like, if we can make it to this 20-year anniversary, that's probably a good place to button things up for our venue in Ybor with just so much change, and also not having the ability to be able to purchase the building. My landlord, very honestly, has always told me that we would not, he wouldn't sell. But at the same time, I just have to look at things at some point, go, if I'm never going to own this building and the district keeps changing and it's going to get more expensive and parking gets more expensive and rent gets more expensive and you become more of a square peg trying to fit into a round hole instead of the center of an area that you were for years, you have to make a decision. And as hard as it is, sometimes you have to realize that the best path forward is probably to move in a new direction and try to, start over in a sense and rise again somewhere else.
I want to just point out too, actually, let me just read a little bit from Live Nation. After the ruling last month, they released this statement. It says, quote, "The jury's verdict is not the last word on this matter. Pending motions will determine whether the liability and damages rulings stand. Of course, Live Nation can and will appeal any unfavorable rulings on these motions." And I should note, too, we did reach out to Live Nation and Ticketmaster just a few minutes ago. We received this response, quote, "When we have more lead time, we'd like to continue to engage and offer a spokesperson to go on your show. We also suggest reaching out to Tony Refugiato of No Club Presents. He's an icon in the Tampa music scene and deeply entrenched in the indie community. Important voice to talk to about the overall live entertainment market there." They also say a 300 capacity club and a 4,300 seat venue serve entirely different audiences at different moments in an artist's career. And Live Nation has understood that distinction in Tampa for decades. We have been part of the live entertainment scene, they say, since the 1990s, and our new Ybor City venue reflects our continued investment in this market and its future. So we will reach out and hopefully hear more from folks from the Ticketmaster perspective on the show. But what do you say to that?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. I mean, first and foremost, I will tell you that the day that I went to go testify, I got word that they were going to depose me for questioning. And then I was served papers on Memorial Day by Live Nation because they want to poke holes in everything I've said. And what I would say about the difference between a 4,300 and a 300-person room is the same thing I said during my testimony. Live Nation is devoted to vertically integrating into a market. And when they come in at the start as a 4,300-person venue, it's not one shot. It's something that happens a slow burn over time, tour by tour, show by show, and them getting themselves more deeper into the market. The first touch.
Can I ask too, like how do you ticket shows at your venue?
I use my own company as Venue Pilot. I also work with other promoters. Some of them are contracted with Ticketmaster. So in order to have access to those people, it behooves me to have to use their ticketing. Ticketmaster also works with the resale market. So sometimes it limits the amount of people that are in my room. Ticketmaster bids on shows all of a sudden now in my market where they want to sign those artists up early, and sometimes in order to get that artist through your market, if you're not willing to deal with Live Nation, you don't have access to that show. So once again, what I would say about the 4,300 person venue is, you can draw the lines of comparison to how they're already impacting my room, but I think it's fair to say that, when you have an entity that was just found guilty of being a monopoly, which I also think it's a shame to say the jury's word is not the last word, because the way our country's supposed to work is that's a jury of the people that unequivocally, undeniably agreed that you are a monopoly and you practice unfair practices.
But so they're allowed to appeal. Like that's part of the rules
please
too.
Appeal, but you could also look at it and go, why is this the perception of how we operate? And and try to improve on what you do, in a way that's going to support the networks around you. But I would venture to say that, especially since there was just announcement that a room of similar size is opening right down the street by VSG, that I'm not sure that this market will support both of those venues. And I'm also concerned about the impact a Live Nation venue will have not only on that VSG room, but on the Strass Center, on Ruth Eckerd Hall, on, Janice Landing. I just think that...
you think there's too many venues already?
I think that tickets are way too expensive. And I think Tampa at one point was a tertiary market that our independents made attractive. And I think that if it grows too quickly and we bring in partners that are already being looked at for practices that, aren't favorable, it concerns me. And I think it should concern our entire Tampa market.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with Tom DeGeorge. He's the owner of Crowbar in Ybor City, talking about the Ticketmaster ruling that came down back in April, a federal jury finding Live Nation and Ticketmaster acting as a monopoly. Ticketmaster and Live Nation say they will appeal that ruling. I want to hear from you, though. What do you think about this? Are you liking what you're seeing on the bill for your tickets if you're going to live events? 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email us at floridamatters@wusf.org. Maybe you're an artist as well. I want to hear your perspective too. 813-755-6562 to join the conversation. So, one line from your testimony stands out. You say independent venues have to make every show make financial sense, while Live Nation can absorb losses because of the billions of dollars it makes every year. So, is there a way for these two kind of different ways of doing business to coexist?
Neva, our stance on it is we want to see them completely broken up. I don't see how you can control the tours, you can control the ticketing, you can control the artist contracts, you can control the touring, you control the vending, and make it fair. They can put a blanket number on something, invest in that artist from early stage, pay them way more than anybody else could, and then also let them know we want to do your next big tour when you do it. It's just not a fair competitive market when you're dealing with an entity like Live Nation. And locally here, we did start a petition that has close to 10,000 signatures at this point from Floridians and locals that are concerned about Live Nation coming into this market too. So I think that our legislators and our lawmakers here in Tampa should be paying close attention, as well as the development. Let's look at this and try to figure out if we're making the right decision or not before we dive right into it.
What about the response from musicians, venue owners, and fans? What have they said about your testimony?
I can't speak for everybody. I can only say that, it was overwhelming, the amount of feedback that I got back from the time I testified till, even till still now. But almost in the immediate aftermath, I got hundreds of messages from venues around the country, from different artists, local artists, some touring artists, national artists I've dealt with, and the fans and music fans too. And once again, I think that there's a lot of concern from a lot of people, and
let's actually hear from one of those people now.
Excellent.
Ben is calling in from Osprey. Ben, you're on the air. What's your thought?
Hey, I'm a little bit flustered because this is so recent, but I'm a very disgruntled fan. And my two examples, I tried to buy Bruce Springsteen tickets recently, and they introduced this dynamic pricing nonsense.
The worst.
And by the time I got in this very long waiting system and waiting queue, these seats were showing, and it literally looked like an arcade. The seat prices went from like $500 to $1,500, and they would change, and it was just blinking. It was like a blinking console of indiscriminate price gouging that made no sense. And it was so frustrating that I'm not dealing with artists who deal with this, right? I was that frustrated I didn't go to the concert. And most recently, this was this past weekend, there's a Tom Morello show in D.C. that looks awesome with the Foo Fighters and a whole big lineup, including actually Bruce Springsteen. as a special guest.
Yeah.
And I signed up early for a special code from the artist to get on at 10 a.m. on, I think it was like a Friday or something. So I did that. I logged on early. I couldn't get in. 10 a.m. I got in. I had to wait on, and of course it took you to Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
So then I was waiting to get in, and then after like 5 minutes of just waiting for them to calculate my number in line, I was literally number 84,000 in line.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it sounds mind-boggling. Ben, thank you so much for the call. We're going to have to let you go, but Tom, I wonder if we could ask you to stick around for a couple more minutes and address that. I think we'll have some other calls too. You're listening to Florida Matters Live and Local, talking about the Ticketmaster jury ruling that came down back in April. Want to hear what you think about ticket prices and whether you think there's some light on the horizon for folks who enjoy going to concerts, whether they're big artists or up-and-coming artists. 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562 to join the conversation. You can also go to floridamatters@wusf.org. Drop us an email there. Stay with us. Florida Matters Live and Local is back in a moment.
I'm Peter O'Dowd. A new vintage cookbook features updated recipes from the early 1800s through the 1980s. Some look delicious. Then there's the chicken buffet aspic.
Is it something that I think people should eat? Absolutely not. I personally find them vile, but it's one of those things where it's also really oddly cathartic to build them.
Next time, here and now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
Okay, deep breath. Do you need a break from the day? We've got you covered with jazz. Listen to jazz performances and interviews over at WUSFjazz.org to make your day a little brighter. Go to WUSFjazz.org.
On the next Fresh Air, novelist Maggie O'Farrell. She wrote the book Hamnet and co-wrote the screenplay for the film adaptation. She has a new book called Land, about a father and son mapping 19th century Ireland after the devastation of the Great Famine. Join us.
Great conversation on Fresh Air tonight at 7 on WUSF.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. We're talking about the recent decision of federal jury finding that Ticketmaster and Live Nation operate as a monopoly. Ticketmaster and Live Nation say they will appeal any unfavorable ruling. We're with Tom DeGeorge. He's the owner of Crowbar. It's an independent venue in Ybor City. Went up to Washington, D.C. recently to testify about his perspective on ticket prices. I want to hear from you as well. The number's 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. Let's go to the phones. We've got Anthony calling in from Pasco, I believe. Anthony, you're on the air. What are you thinking?
Hi, thanks for having me on. I was just going to, the guest, Tom, mentioned Janice on the show, and that made me think of the live shows that I've been to Janice. You know, I grew up in St. Pete, and I've always loved that venue. And what I've noticed is the exact opposite of high ticket prices. You know, like I could get into a show for like, you know, $30 or even lower on sometimes. And then the band kind of makes up for it in, you know, merch prices, right? So it's a $30 t-shirt or, you know, $20 CD or something like that. But on the flip side, you know, Rush is coming to Tampa, which I thought was interesting. And those ticket prices, I didn't even look because I didn't even bother because I figured, you know, it's going to be in a seat. It might be, you know, a couple $100 or something like that. And, you know, the difference there, I think, is just appreciating Janice as a staple of the St. Pete culture where it's an open air, you know, kind of venue and it's more intimate, right? So it's kind of interesting. The value proposition is completely flipped, right? I can get a more intimate experience for $30 and have a great time, instead of paying $200 and sitting in a seat for a couple hours. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you so much for that perspective, Anthony. What about that?
I mean, I totally agree, and that's why we have to protect our rooms like Janice. When Live Nation comes into a market and they start going smaller and smaller, once again, like the one thing I said during my testimony, how they can afford to lose until they win because they got their hands on all these other parts of the pie. If they have a 4,000 person room that's never existed before, they can bid on places that do 1,500 to 2,000 and scale that room a little bit down because they can lose on that tour in order to get their hands in more things up until things jump up to the arena level. Right now, they don't have a room of that size in our market that they own, operate, and book. So that's a great reason to keep them out, or else they're going to control the market for the ticketing prices, across the board. And then you also have those smaller rooms that, for whatever reason, and mostly because they're forced to, they have to take some bookings from Live Nation in order to get those artists in. They won't need those rooms anymore if they have their own rooms.
Let's go to Christine calling in from Clearwater. Christine, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. Yes, I just wanted to point out that I don't have a smartphone, and that is the only way that I was able to get Madonna tickets. I had to convince a friend to use her smartphone because I paid for the Madonna tickets online at Ticketmaster with my credit card, but there was a disclaimer on the receipt that said this is not eligible to use as your entrance to the show to get into the venue. And I also believe that you can't walk up to the box office, and I'm only basing this on my own experiences, but that you can't walk up to the box office on day of show with just a credit card to get in. And that's what I wanted to bring to someone's attention. You got to have a smartphone to get to the larger venues. I'm sure like Ruth Eckerd or something, I still go there and walk up to the ticket box office and pay with cash or credit card. But
Christine, real quick, was that the 2024 tour? Was that when you saw Madonna?
Yes, when she had canceled it and came back, it was April of 2024, I believe. Yes.
Despite the hassle, was it worth it?
Oh, indeed. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, the seats in the Vinnick Place or whatever it's called were a little rough, but other than that, it was well worth it.
Yeah, Madonna's still got it. Christine, thank you so much for that call. Tom, just to kind of close out here, I mean, how do you see this whole thing playing out? Obviously, the court case, there's going to be an appeal. It may drag on, but what is the future of small venues like yourselves?
I mean, I think a lot of it depends on what those AGs decide and what the judge's ruling eventually is. One of the people that was there testifying to was the California AG. Their input on what they believe should happen is going to be very significant to how things turn out. And so I was also trying to impress upon him, hey, these are the problems we're facing. And, I hope that as things go on, the leveling field, the playing field is leveled a bit so we can have a fairer market and indies can continue, not just to survive, but hopefully thrive.
Yeah,
because I think having that kind of diversity in the market and having more independent promoters and regional promoters and just the ability to keep ticket prices lower and make it more affordable is what people really want. They want access to their favorite bands, and that happens with a fair market.
Tom DeGeorge, owner of Crowbar, been talking about the impact of Ticketmaster and Live Nation, what that has on local venues, and that recent court ruling. Tom, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's turn now to something a little bit different. If you'd been on the Space Coast last Thursday evening, you would have gotten a bit of a surprise. And that is the sound of Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket exploding while it was being tested on the launch pad at Cape Canaveral. It was captured by NASA Spaceflight.com's 24/7 Space Coast live stream. They've got a microphone at the Kennedy Press Center site. That's 10 miles from the launch pad. And if you listen closely, you might have heard the little kind of whine of those panels on the vehicle assembly building resonating with that shockwave. The fireball
lit up the night sky. You can see video on NASAspaceflight.com's YouTube channel, and the shockwave from the explosion registered on seismographs more than 100 miles away. Blue Origin is one of the commercial spaceflight companies involved in NASA's moon mission. So what does the cleanup look like from this mighty explosion? How will this affect NASA's return to the moon? To help explain all this is Brendan Byrne, the host of Central Florida Public Media's space exploration podcast, Are We There Yet? And if you saw or heard that explosion last Thursday night, give us a call. Let us know what you experienced. 813-755-6562 or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Brendan, I mean, you're a little bit closer than Tampa to the Space Coast. Did that register with you? Were you kind of hearing or seeing anything?
I was not hearing or seeing anything. I was sleeping. I went to bed early that night. It was 9 o'clock that happened. But you could see that there was lots of reports all across Central Florida of people that saw it. It was on their Ring cameras. It shook windows. And a bit terrifying when you don't realize what you're looking at. You see this massive fireball mushroom cloud extending into the sky. Terrifying.
Now, that was static firing the rocket. What's that about?
So this is what they do before they launch a vehicle to test the engines. They actually strap the rocket down to the launch pad, fire it, and test those engines for a very, very brief time. Now, that might have been a good thing because there didn't happen to be a payload on top, not as much fuel as a normal rocket launch. So surprisingly, it could have been worse than what we saw.
Now, there's a reason, of course, they built the Kennedy Space Center out on Cape Canaveral. One of several reasons, but it's a long way away from a lot of civilization. But still, an explosion like this is going to leave a mess behind, right? So how are they cleaning it up?
So Blue Origin is asking folks to call them if they see any debris that has come up. I haven't seen any reports of that happening. And because there wasn't a payload on top of it, there's not usually, or we don't anticipate that there is a very toxic propellant on board called hydrazine. But still, Blue Origin and the U.S. Space Force are saying if you see debris, don't touch it, just call it. It could be harmful.
Yeah. Now, Blue Origin, of course, is part of this whole plan that NASA has to go back to the moon. What role were they going to play, and how much does this explosion set things back?
They have a major role to play. So they were just awarded multiple contracts to deliver supplies to the lunar surface, which is going to help build the permanent lunar base for future Artemis missions. We don't know if they're able to launch this lander on another vehicle. They could potentially launch it on SpaceX's Falcon Heavy, but that is their competitor. We probably don't want to do that. Blue Origin says they're going to launch by the end of this year. We'll see about that. But really, they were also supposed to launch one of their landers up into Earth orbit for Artemis 3, which is happening next year for the Orion spacecraft to rendezvous and dock with either that and or SpaceX's Starship. NASA's still moving forward with that. They're announcing the crew to that next week, but it's very likely that this is going to be impacted, even if they can get back to flying at the end of this year, which is pretty ambitious.
I mean, these kind of mishaps happen, right? We've seen quite a bit of that with SpaceX as they've tested a lot of their vehicles. But is this a blow to Blue Origin's reputation in some ways?
You know, it certainly is a blow to their reputation because this is not how they design. SpaceX does design that way. I think even bigger than that, because they don't anticipate blowing up during testing, they only have one launch facility or one working launch facility. So there was major damage to the launch facility at Cape Canaveral. And that is where the really major blow is coming from with this explosion, is rebuilding that pad, along with trying to figure out what happened. We're still not sure what happened. Blue Origin hasn't told us if they know yet, but that is surely an investigation that's ongoing.
And in the last 30 seconds or so here, Bren, what are you going to be paying attention to as that investigation continues and they try and get that launch pad back up and running?
Well, I'll be paying attention to what the FAA says about the investigation into what happened. There will certainly be a mishap investigation, but there is buy-in from NASA, buy-in from the presidential administration to get Artemis moving and moving forward. So I could see that they may try to expedite that thing, but I think in the here and now, really looking to see how that pad comes back together before they're able to launch again.
Brendan Byrne, host of the space exploration podcast, Are We There Yet? Hosted by Central Florida Public Media. Brendan, thank you so much for stopping by.
Always a pleasure, Matt. Thanks.
Well, that is our show for today. Next time on Florida Matters Live and Local. If you play tennis, you're finding it hard to get some time on a public tennis court. The U.S. Tennis Association wants more investment in public tennis courts. You can tune in and hear more tomorrow at noon. Our executive producer is Grayson Doctor, producers Amelie Horace and Quincy Walters, engineers Jackson Harp, Blake Bass and Gio Garvin. Jackson composed our theme music, and video is handled today by Alex Ebron and Malika Hollis. Our intern is Claire Maciarola. Subscribe to Florida Matters wherever you get your podcasts and watch on WUSF's YouTube channel. I'm Matthew Petty. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
A year and a half ago, Indonesia launched a nationwide free lunch program in schools to fight childhood malnutrition. That program feeds millions of people, but there's a big problem.
The kitchen staff don't have proper training for hygiene to prepare food properly.
And the food is making tens of thousands of people sick. That's next time on The World.
You can hear The World at 3 o'clock after Here and Now, which is next. You're listening to WUSF 89.7 Tampa, winner of the 2025 Edward R. Murrow National Award for Overall Excellence. This is your spot for local.
The Foundation for a Healthy St. Petersburg is creating a community in which good